Saluton, parolas Tomaso.
Kaj mi estas Logano.
Kai bonvenon al Lernu kun Logano. All right, so what do you know about the table of correlatives? Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
No. And see, that's the thing I'm trying to let you know watching this, is you don't need to know what the table of correlatives is to be able to speak Esperanto. So before getting into the lesson, I'd like to review a couple points from previous lessons. One are the different words for to ask. On the one hand, we've got demandi. On the other hand, we have peti. Now remember, demandi always means to ask a question. So demando would be a question. Demandi is to ask a question. So then the other word that we have is peti. Peti means to request. Sometimes you'll see it in the exercises as to ask for, but it always means to ask. That for is always included in it. So if you ever want to express the idea of asking for something, mi petas tion. If you don't understand something in the class, se vi ne komprenas ion, vi povas demandi. But if you want a glass of milk, mi petis glason da lacto, or mi petis lacton. The big thing is to not translate every word literally, and especially in the course, a lot of times there are dashes that will indicate to you whether something should be translated as one word or not. And so whenever you see to ask for, always think that means to request. And request is peti. Another point that trips people up occasionally is the rule. I like to say it this way: no n in estas. What that means is that when you have two words that are connected with the word estas in the middle, you never use an n on the second word. So we talked in the last example, Logano estas mia filo, right? There's no n on mia filo. So let's just do a quick quiz, I guess, here on the whiteboard. So let's see. I am a man. Mi estas. What's the next word? Does it have an N on it or not? Mi estas. Right, so let's say you want to say I know a man. Mi konas. Let's say I like bread. Mi shatas. What's the next word? Does it have an N on it or not? Let's see. That is bread. Tio estas. All right. And back to Logan and me. Kaj nun ni faros la kvinan lecionon, en kiu ni lernos prezenti nin, kaj ni ankaŭ parolos pri la tabelo de correlativoj. The theme of the lesson is the correlativoj, or it's called the correlatives in English. And in the lesson material, there's an entire table of them with 45 words. My suggestion is always, don't let that table worry you. It's laid out in a certain way that there's a certain logic to it. But I don't think anybody really learns any other language that way. And there are good reasons, I think, to teach people the table, and that table is there in the description for you to look at. But we're going to look at these as individual words. Some of these words you will have seen even in the first episode of the Mazi course, and some of them are words that we have been including in our conversational sentences that we've been sharing in the previous lessons. For example, kiel vi fartas?
Mi fartas bone, dankon.
Oh, dankon. Ankaŭ mi fartas bone. What does kiel mi fartas mean?
How are you?
All right, so here's a question.
How do you feel?
Yeah, how are you, basically.
Yeah.
So what does kiel mean?
How?
Right, so kiel means how, which actually segues into another theme of the lesson, which are some greetings. Now, I think we've actually covered all of these. Saluton.
Hi.
Yeah, bonan matenon.
Good morning.
Yeah, bonan tagon.
Good day.
Yeah, we know all those things. We talked about kiel vi fartas. We talked about, and I know it's in one of our courses, one of our phrases, it's kie vi loĝas.
Where do you live?
Where do you live? Right, so what does kia mean?
Where?
Yep. So we know kiel means kiel vi fartas. What does kiel mean?
How?
Yep. And kia, as in kia vi loĝas?
Means where?
Where? Okay. The lesson is encouraging people to learn to talk about themselves. So think about Johanna Bruno, I think, is the example in the lesson. Think about how you can introduce yourself in a similar way. Like, I'm going to say, mi estas Tomaso,
Kaj mi estas Logano.
kaj mi loĝas en Rochestro. Kie vi loĝas?
En Rochestro.
Kaj mi parolas Esperanton 19 jarojn.
Kaj mi parolas Esperanton hodiaŭ.
Bone.
Yep.
All right.
We're talking more and more Esperanto.
Yep. So let's think about this for a minute. So all the ones that start with K they're question words, like what, where,
When, why, and how.
when, why, and how. Yeah. And most of them.
Who?
Yep. The letters that start with T you can point with them. So I'll say, we were doing at the end of a recent episode, we were going tie, tie, tie.
And Tiachi.
Right, tie, chi.
And Chitia.
You know, chi's on my list of things to talk about, but we'll get to the chi. If there's nothing on the front, ie, it's kind of ambiguous what we're talking about. So if I were to say iam mi konis viron, you know what that means?
Iam?
Iam.
No.
It means sometime.
Sometimes you what?
If I said tiam mi loĝis en Rochestro, at that time I lived in Rochester, right? But if I were to say iam mi loĝis en alia urbo,
Sometimes
that would
I
be-
live in a tree.
no, I'm not.
No, that's
Did I say
urbo.
arbo? No, urbo.
Yeah.
Yeah, arbo. You're funny. All right, and then chiam, that means always. So if the word starts with chi, it has to do with happens all the time. And then neniam, that means never. So any of the words that start with n, nen, actually starts with nen, neniam, that has to do with something that's negative or not happening. Love,
What does mnemonic mean?
well, son, maybe this song will help. Boom, boom, boom. All right, we'll cut that part out. So one of the things that happens, if you try to learn a lot of these words at once, they all start to look alike. So sometimes you can come up with special memory aids, and I love memory aids. We're going to start with the word kia. K-I-A. Do you know what that means?
Oh, if I typed it out, I know written it out, I probably would, but...
Yeah, it means what kind. The answer to Kia, notice that Kia ends in A. The answer to any question with Kia will also end in an A. So the next word is Kio, ends with an O. And any of these table words that end in O have to do with a concrete thing. And they refer to nouns. So just like a noun ends in O, Kio ends in O. We have kie. We've already talked about kia vi loĝas. So we know that means where do you live. But the other thing is that song, Lolly, 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 get your adverbs here. There's a line here that I love. How, where, or when, condition, or reason. These questions are answered when you use an adverb. So it's how, where, and when, condition, or reason. So how, where, and when, those are three different kinds of... All right, so we've got kia, and we know that ends in A, and the answer to that question will end in A. Then the next one we have is kiam, K-I-A-M. Just think A-M and P-M. Kiam, that means when. And then A-E, we got E. The next one is kie, which ends in E like an adverb. And specifically it has to do with location. Remember in the song, so it's how, where, or when. So we already talked about when with kiam. Now we've got where with kie. And then there's also kiel, as in kiel vifartas, and that also has an E in it like an adverb. Has the L in there so we can tell it's different from kiel. So kie is what's kie? Kie vilojas. Kie is where, and kiel
is how.
How. Alright, so now we're on to the correlatives that end in O, like kio, which means
what?
Yep. And remember the Mozzie video that we saw, they're asking everybody what their jobs are, and they say kio vi estas, and Reggio says mi estas Reggio.
Yeah.
The Carlos says mi estas
Jardinisto.
Right. So the question is kio, and the answer ends in O. And then we're on to kiom. And I always like to think of the OM as how much. How much. That's what kiom means. And then we have kiu. What's kiu?
Who.
Who. And do you notice what Logan did with his lips when he said who?
Who.
All right, so what do you know about the table of correlatives? Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
No. And see, that's the thing I'm trying to let you know watching this, is you don't need to know what the table of correlatives is to be able to speak Esperanto. What we mean by a correlative is a word like what, or who, or that, or then, or sometimes. And in Esperanto, they fit into a kind of a neat table. And you'll find that in the lesson material. And it's based on the letter that it starts with and the letter that it ends with, and you can sort of cross-match them and make up the words or figure out what the words means if you didn't feel like looking them up in the dictionary. But I'm going to tell you, nobody says that the word what in English. You'll never be in an English class where somebody will tell you that WH, the way to understand WH is you take the first two letters, and that means what. And the last two letters, which are AT, and that means that. And then you put the what, or that means thing. So you take the WH, which means what, and the AT that makes thing, and you put it together, that means what thing. No one teaches English that way, and there's no real reason to learn Esperanto that way. So if the table doesn't work for you to help you learn the words, you can learn them in context, which is what we've been doing all along. We talk about kiel vi fartas, and so on. And the other one we talked about is, what does Q mean? Q vi estas. Q estas tiu persono.
Who?
Who. So just like you say who, you get Q. And Q means who. It also means which. It means which person or which thing. In fact, that's one point that I will take right out of the lesson, is they talk about the difference between Kio and, or let's just use Tio for example. T-I-O. Tio means that. Tiu means that. So the question is, how do we know the difference? Do you know the difference between Tiu and Tio? Alright, so let's think about this for a minute. So we've got basically the answer, the Kio, we said, ends in O, and the answer is going to end in O. So Tio itself is the whole answer. So I can point to something and say, Tio estas lampo, Tio estas seggio, Tio estas plafono, right? That's the floor, that's the ceiling, that's the, I don't remember what I just said, the light, the lamp. But if we want to talk about, we've got a couple things in this room, we could say, well, which lamp? Tiu lampo, that one. Tiu lampo. So if there's a noun that comes after it, that lamp, then you will use tiu. That's the difference. You'll never say tio lampo, because tio is already a whole thought by itself. Remember from the previous lesson we talked about the word chew, which was used to ask questions. Just want to remind you that's for yes or no questions. You'll never use chew with a question that starts with K. So if I want to say kie vi loĝas, there's no chew in there. Chew's only for the yes or no questions. If I say kiel vi fartas, there's no chew. What I'd like to do now is to look at the words that you actually need to know for the exercises of this lesson, and I'm going to suggest that you focus just on those this week. Just learning those words. Don't worry about the whole table. If you'd like to look at the table, if you find it helpful, go ahead. Again, if you have questions, you can let me know. But I would start with just the ones that you need for this week's lessons. But let's see how many of these we can do. We can use different examples if we can. But so the first exercise is, what thing is that thing? In fact, that's what I was just talking about.
Kio estas tio.
Yeah. All right. So, and we also, another one that's in the exercises is where. We talked about that. Remember what where is? Where do you live?
Kia.
Kia is where. Who ate my cake? Whoops! We're not going to translate the whole thing, but how do you say who?
Q.
Yeah, read my lips.
Q. That's what I said.
I know. That's how I always remembered it, as who and Q. All right. Everything is wet. How do you say everything? Chio. All right, that's another one that ends in O. If I say, what is it? It's everything. They both, see, the answer the question and the answer both end in O. Chio. My pen is somewhere. What is somewhere?
Chia.
Chia is everywhere, and we take off the first sound and it becomes more general. Take off the first sound of chia.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Then I drank my tea. So then has to do with time. How do we remember time?
Kiam.
Yep, Kiam, the AM PM. How does she run? That's the same as how do you do. Well, I'm going to talk about that one. Why are you smoking? We haven't talked about this one yet. This is a very common word. You want to know why something is. So the word for why is kial. K-I-A-L. And I don't know why this helps me, but I've actually heard other people say the same thing. We think about the word kialo. If you're going to have your flashcards or whatever you do to drill vocabulary, put the word kialo in there as well. Do you know what kialo means?
No.
Yeah. Kialo is reason. It's the noun. It's the noun form of the word kial, and it's actually a fairly common word. So that's worth adding to your list. And I find that when I think of that word kialo, and if I get stuck on whether, this is back in the day when I was learning, when I got stuck on whether the word was kiel or kial, I would say, all right, it's not kielo, it's kialo, right? And that helps anchor it there. Is another one. Nobody's. You know what?
Nobody.
Nobody's.
Nobody, yeah.
That's actually not a very common word, but I will mention that the possessive correlatives end in ies. So es is somebody's, nenies is nobody's. That one's not actually all that common. How did you make it? Did we talk about how? How? How do you do?
Yeah, we did.
How do you say how do you do?
Kiel.
Yep, Kiel.
Yep.
Sleepy?
Yep.
I am not that kind of girl. And that kind of girl is an answer to the question. You can think about it this way. You think you can be a good girl, you can be a tall girl, you can be a red girl. I don't know how, but...
Well, someone just hits you when you're a red girl.
I suppose. And anyway, so that's what it ends in A. Just like, because the answer to that question is an adjective. So this one is not a question. You're pointing to it. I'm not that kind of girl. So it would start with a T. What kind of sandwich do you have? Yep. All right, so number 18 has another thing that I want to point out. What did you ask for? That for throws off a lot of people. What does petit mean?
To ask for.
Yes, so petit already means to ask for, so keep that in mind when doing that one. All right, number 19, is everybody dry? How do you say everybody?
Chewy.
Chewy. All right, so here's the other thing that you need to think about, and I've seen this one throw off some people, is it starts with is. All right, so we talked about it in the last lesson that chu is the question word for yes or no questions. So when I asked Logan the first time what he thought it meant is. And it's easy to see why somebody would think that, like we talked about the last time. And this is one of those ones that I've seen trip some people up because they see the word is and they think, okay, that's chu, and then they go from there. But what you need to think of is everyone is dry, and then make it a yes or no question by adding chu in front of it. So that's how you would do that one. And the last one, who is that? Oh, which is the exact opposite of number 1. Notice that. We've got what is that and who is that. How would you say who is that? Read my lips.
Chew, estas.
Questions start with K. So here's one of my other memory devices. So we think of the key questions. So all the questions start with key. What's your key question? How would you say number 20 with a key question?
Kia estas.
Kia is where? How do you say who? Read my lips.
Dad.
Right.
Kiu estas.
There are 2 different words for that. We talked about that before. Yeah, and since estas is like an equal sign, a lot of times, not always, but in this case, it's true that it's sort of both 2 sides of that equal sign will be the same. Esperanto's keeping you awake. Kiu estas tiu.
Oh.
So I hope everyone gets that one right when they send it in. And that's exactly why, because you'll say the answer to the question is almost always the same form. So if you say kio, the answer is going to be tio. If you say kia, the answer is going to be tia. If you say kio, the answer is going to be tio.
You could also say chu estas, right?
Chu estas?
Mm-hmm.
Chu estas means is it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is it that?
Yeah.
In fact, that's another way that people want to, when they ask it from the other side, if they say, how do I know the difference between tio and tiu? I'll tell them, well, that's because tiu answers the question which or who, and tio answers the question what. I want to once again thank you for watching the video. Please be sure to tell your friends if you liked it, and share this video on Reddit or Facebook or that sort of thing. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it, and also I'd like to thank Timoteo and the other patrons who are supporting us through Patreon, and we really do appreciate your support. It helps, and it's very encouraging, so thanks again, and until next time,
Gis la revido.
Gis revido.